corresponds to Berlin for me, and some of it doesn't. I don't know, you can sort of judge if it feels that way to you. This first poem is called Tallow. I should say, Paula wanted me to mention something, since many of you are not used to poetry or poetry readings, that it's difficult work, this, and some of you are not native English speakers either. It may seem more difficult. So hopefully the sound of it, it has a kind of musicality or a lyricism that you might find appealing if you don't follow semantically, so to speak.
Be careful.
So again, tallow. So kindles the tallow, the gate of all embers, what cold lips could stutter, the absence of modes. To this feeble herald, the last night is over, the last wall is breached, though the scars were not few. How differs this brink from the past of all futures? How differs this cloth from its quarry of folds? The dream work begins without shadow or glimmer. The dream of the wing is the burden of plumes. This next one is the first presented in the book. It's called Brittle While. Same sickle reaps same straw, lays down same bed of same relief. The masters of my depredation leave behind their gasping thugs to shepherd the submission of my languor to defeat. Carouse a brittle while now, it's you who have the task of idly rotting in the street, whose tongue would rather taste the tepid rancor of this gutter flow than suckle at the surfeit of some scornful liege, some welfare teat. It's you and me, my friend, who wallow in the ordure. It's both of us together who will hold open the breach. Carouse a brittle while now, our share of the remainder is asylumed in this empty vow, a pledge always adhered to and complete. Keepsake. Spit on the penance. The purloined reprisal awaits you. The wolf with no teeth will chew with his eyes before feeding. Carry the keepsake of vengeance within every sinew. Yours is not to grieve for the parted. Yours is the parting. This one is called Unsung. One livid gob will burst from bloom for time and times and half a time. Who can recall what yet decays will not indulge the mouth its tongue. Who can recall will salt away the pit before it finds its plum, the cart before its sullen dray decamps to fight the war to come. What needs this null a world to groom? What needs the light? What needs the sun? A shadow risen from the shade, as though each mirror held the one reflection, not at once arrayed with ornaments to smut or gaume, to drain the night, to win the day, for this, the first begotten song, unsung. This next poem I wrote when I first got here. I thought, after talking to some of the fellow residents and such, maybe I'd write a book of poems called Poems for Painters. And John, if anybody knows, there's a John Wiener's poem called A Poem for Painters. Anyway, I soon realized that poems about painting were not any more poems for painters than poems about anything else. That there's sort of poems that I'd written about painting in some way. But some poems in here are a result of that exploration, including this one, which is called Figure of Carcass of Beef. And it's sort of in relation to, there's this kind of trope in painting history that starts with Rembrandt, who had a peculiar notion and really audaciously painted this sort of hanging carcass of beef. And that was taken up by other painters, in particular Chaim Soutine, who was profoundly obsessed with it and painted it over and over again. And then Francis Bacon, you may have seen, extremely famous, it's called Figure with Meat. And of course he puts, between the two halves of the carcass, he puts Pope Pius X screaming, as one would want. So this is, in a sense, a meditation on this trope in painting as a trope in writing as well. It's figure of carcass of beef. With every bristled ordinance shot off against the pendant cleft of hacked and fraying ungulate, another calf half lowing from the butcher's hook recedes into its wormless hump of iterative metaphor intact. Is it not enough to haft a vision, sow an Orphic dream, and be at once exempted from all sentimental grazing? Why renounce transcendence for the beau ideal of meaning? But men are judged by acts, not dreams. This next piece, which is the eponymous poem from this collection, is in sort of 7 short pieces, a cycle of poems called Songs of Surrender. In some ways, I think it's the thing that's most specifically a set of poems in response to being in Berlin for me, which I don't know if that'll be obvious or not, but to some degree. 1. What begins at conviction will end with a bullet. This is our privilege. We keep it by muscling out of the plumage, the scurvy of order, our final adornment, as fragile and fleeting as roots in the lime. I am loved by the flames, but the ash cannot stand me. And this, can you hear it? The bullet is nigh. 2. Distance effervesces from the alien in the mirror. We imagine this in unison, but live it as an aggregate of unrelated singulars. Look, it's where they came for you. Strip the rust from every hilltop, pull the string from every finger. No oceans rise, no borders stalls, the enemy at the table. It's not the ends that hollow out our words, but the beginnings. 3. The buildings are tilled by the edges of windows, spilling, consuming the basilisk rails. We carry the boulevards out of necessity because they can't carry themselves. Put your hand on my throat. This is the custom. Break the skin if you must. I won't make a sound. The ranks will assemble. The fields will adopt them and silt up with gutters, a place to call ours. 4. What can in the sloth, in the scale of the tracery, the sluice and the slant of projectiles mean to the one forced to suffer the singular puncture, plucked from impassable air? What does in the face of this shunting between the face and the scale of this flailing surrender, the slaughter of every last partisan gleaned for the conquering vagabond, gorged on the savor of vengeance, then malice, then sated despair? 5. That has fallen once had flown. The syrinx in the ulna made a bubble burst to residue, the whited stain a dusty pock upon the polished marl. Just remind me, was it you who balked at being first to leap, who pushed the next one through without a harness clipped to back up wing or prick of greasy quill? It was, although you claimed to be a second-order power, that you'd only followed suit in helping scrape that vicious marker on the toppled scrim, the rising ground. 6. Lips churned to ashes, sewn shut by the narrows, sewn dead as the apple, churned dead is the air, condemned to a new life, condemned to the narrows, the transient ardor released by the beer. To reveal your degrees in the crape of the runnel, to be clothed in the fist as the evening lays bare what you've taken to augur, the vista of gutters, the apple, the absence, the hope of return. 7. This mutiny against the plotting, one time, once, against the plotting, mustered to the nervous cry of mutinously easy lucre, eyes sewn into nervous clutches, mouths sewn into mewling gluts. To give in, to concede to the departure while it's still departing, nervous shadow ripped from shadow, blossomed axe and ash unsharped. To give in, that's the final ticket. Once and final chance to make a forfeiture from mewling lucre, easy gush from slobbered gulch. To plot the run from shattered prospects, ash unstuffed from knuckled sockets, prostrate in some flimsy sinkhole, voided of its flimsy sink. To give in, that's the final sequence. Blossomed gulch and honed appeasement, mutinously seeking lucre, plotting its assured rebuke. I'll read one more. It's called So Fares All. What substitutes for clarity survives all your inclusions. A fugitive behind the torch, confessed to coming due. What counts the stolen aegis is the algebra of margins, the siphon of the throat unplumbed, to slop a paper sword. Not deity, but circumstance. Not figure, but encasement. Not border, but horizon, stricken starless from the gloam. Not barrier, but finitude. Not scalpel, but incision. A void congealed with gnosis into feature. So fares all. Thank you.